Why would a player ask for $325 million in signing bonus? Why would a team give $325 million in a signing bonus? Let's break it down. Let's get to brass tacks. Tax, not TACKS, TAX. A signing bonus is earned the day of the signing of a contract. Whether the signing bonus is paid immediately, within 20 days, within 30 days, within 5 years, 10 years, or 14 years. According to the Internal Revenue Service, according to general accepted accounting principles, when you sign your signing bonus, when you sign your contract, and it comes, it's yours. You pay tax on that signing bonus according to where you are when you sign that contract. And where Vladimir Guerrero is not Toronto. It's not California. It's Florida. That signing bonus will be taxed currently as though he is a Florida resident. Notwithstanding the fact that his daughter believes they live in Toronto, notwithstanding the fact they may spend 81 nights because they play 81 games in Toronto. Maybe there's a vacation in Toronto, but that doesn't count for residency. In baseball, players pay taxes in every state they play in. They cut their salary, divide it equally according to the states in which they play. So, for example, you can argue that you don't play 162 games to earn your salary. You actually play 192 games if you count the 30 games of spring training. You can do it by days. You spend 4 days in Texas playing the Texas Rangers. You then don't have to pay state tax for 4 days of your income that particular year. If you're in Florida for 35 days, 45 days of spring training, plus you play the Marlins for 3 days, you can say that 50 days of your annual earning time is Florida, no state tax. Literally, there are tax returns filed by players for every state in which they play. But the signing bonus and the declaration of income of the signing bonus is according to your state of residence. There's a reason Boris Becker, though he went bankrupt, liked to live in Monte Carlo and Monaco. There's a reason why people have residencies in Texas or Florida and not New York or California. You save the state tax. Vladimir Guerrero said through a translator that he was involved in this contract from start to finish, as though he was the one who had a tax strategy. The reality is, as I've sat with players year after year, time after time, the agent, the accountant, the lawyer, they were very focused on what is the net income to the player. They were not as focused as the union was, as the commissioner's office was, on what the average annual value, what the number was for luxury tax purposes. Toronto didn't get out of any luxury tax issues by giving this signing bonus. You take the full 500 divided by 14 years, you get 35.71, and that's the luxury tax number, clear as day. Like Ohtani, the Dodgers aren't paying $2 million in luxury tax payroll with Ohtani. It's $70 million divided by 20, basically $46 million a year is the present value. You take the present value of a contract, you put it over the number of years of the contract, straight line, that's luxury tax. That's not the issue. What the lawyers and agents are thinking about is the more net income means how do we get more income paid for a player who has declared and legally is a Florida resident. We actually had to do contracts with people that if players played more games out of Florida and had to pay state tax as opposed to no state tax, the player wanted to get a gross up in pay. That was the view of the trade value. That was the trade kicker that players would want. Vladimir Guerrero is in a negotiation, of course, with his agent, of course, with his father, Vladimir Guerrero, as they think about what's the best way to structure a deal, because Edward Rogers, the chairman of Rogers Communications, who said yesterday, I'm in on everything. Mark Shapiro, the president of baseball operations, the president, he's in on everything. Of course, that owner or any owner is in on a deal like this. It's like a CEO of a major corporation. They're in on the big deals. but you want to spend $5 million bucks to do a sponsorship of a team, I'm not going to worry about that. It's like going to the chairman of PepsiCo doing a quadrant deal in Marlins Park. No, we went to the person who was in charge of that. But what the agent does, and what Vladimir does, and Vladimir Jr., is they look at Edward Rogers and they say, you have to sign me. You know you do. I told you I want 500. I'm not going to take 1 penny less. And on top of that, I want to do something a little sneaky, because now we have a problem with collective bargaining. We saw in 2020, we had a problem with the pandemic that I had nothing to do with, Vladimir said. Why would I want to give up money in a pandemic? Why would I want to give up money if there's a work stoppage? I want my money. I would like to mention one other part of the Guerrero argument. I spent, and this is not personal, this is total business. When I was with the Montreal Expos for 2 years, we were a U.S. partnership, but we had to also have a Canadian partnership. That Canadian partnership had to pay Canadian taxes. When you pay Canadian taxes, which players do who play in Canada, whether you're playing 81 games, there are 3, you get credit on your U.S. tax for the Canadian tax that is paid. It's not exactly dollar for dollar, and it's hugely complicated, but Canada gets its money, the U.S. gets its money, but as a player or a president or a U.S. employee living in Canada, not a resident of Canada, you do pay a higher tax percentage than someone living in New York or in Florida. What Vladimir Guerrero did as a member of the Blue Jays is take money out of the pocket of Revenue Canada. Revenue Canada is the entity like the IRS. Revenue Canada was involved in a lawsuit with the Expos, numerous lawsuits that I was a part of, because they wanted more taxes from the Expos, more taxes from the players. Russ Atkins, who is the GM of the Blue Jays, actually went public and said there is a benefit to the player that was attractive from a tax perspective and the guaranteed nature of it. Ross Atkins actually said this. He said there's also benefit to the club from an accounting perspective. What he really means is not the club, he means the parent entity, which is Edward Rogers Communication. But what Revenue Canada is doing when they see all this is they see people doing things purposefully to avoid Canadian tax. It's not dissimilar to what Ohtani did with his contract, where he's going to claim that I don't live in California when I get $68 million a year for years 11 through 20. Therefore, I'm not going to pay California state tax. And you have seen legislative action in California, and you will see a Revenue Canada grievance, if not a lawsuit or an inquiry, an open inquiry into this type of contract, into anything that anyone does, whether it's Canada or California, that is done not to jump into a loophole that exists, but it's done to put a grenade in that loophole. It's done when the loophole is meant to be the size of the Grand Canyon if you are the taxpayer, and what the country wants is the loophole to be the size of a pinhole.